On Christmas morning, as the snow dusted the windows like powdered sugar on forgotten cookies, my daughter handed me a steaming cup and said, "Mom, drink this special tea I made just for you." Her smile was too bright, her eyes darting away too quickly, and in that split second, a chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the winter air seeping through the cracks in our old farmhouse door. I don't know what possessed me, maybe it was the way her hand trembled ever so slightly, or the faint, unfamiliar bitterness I caught in the steam, but I switched the cups when she turned to grab the plate of cinnamon rolls. She didn't notice at first, sipping from what was meant to be mine, and then her face changed. It twisted, not in surprise, but in a quiet horror that made my heart drop like a stone into a frozen pond. I stood there in our cozy kitchen, the one I'd scrubbed clean the night before, with the scent of pine from the tree mingling with the sharp tang of whatever was in that tea. The lights twinkled softly on the branches we'd decorated together just days ago, ornaments from her childhood swaying gently as if whispering secrets. Emily, my only child, now 28 and home for the holidays after years of drifting through jobs and boyfriends in the city, clutched the cup tighter. "Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking like thin ice. "Why did you—" But she couldn't finish. Her skin paled, and she set the cup down with a clatter that echoed through the house, louder than the carols playing faintly from the radio in the living room. I felt a wave of confusion crash over me, followed by a sickening dread. This was supposed to be a morning of joy, presents under the tree, the smell of bacon frying, my husband Jack still snoring upstairs after his night shift at the mill. But as Emily's eyes met mine, wide with something I couldn't yet name, fear, guilt, I knew our little family ritual had shattered. I reached out to steady her, my hand brushing her arm, feeling the rapid pulse beneath her sweater. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm building inside me. She pulled away, mumbling about feeling nauseous, and rushed to the bathroom, the door slamming shut behind her. I stared at the two cups on the table, identical except for the invisible line I'd just crossed. What had I done? Or more importantly, what had she intended? That moment replayed in my mind like a scratched record as I sat alone at the kitchen table, the untouched tea cooling in front of me. The house felt suddenly too quiet, the joy of the holiday evaporating like mist. I'd always prided myself on being the rock of our family, the one who held things together through thick and thin. But now, doubt crept in, cold and insistent. Had I imagined it? Was it just paranoia from too many sleepless nights worrying about her? Emily had been distant lately, her calls home shorter, her visits rarer. But poison? No, that couldn't be. Yet the way she'd reacted. I poured the tea down the sink, watching it swirl away, and wondered if I'd just saved my own life or ruined what was left of ours before all this. Our life was as ordinary as the faded wallpaper in our hallway, patterns worn from years of fingers brushing by on the way to breakfast or bed. I'd married Jack 30 years ago, right out of high school, in a simple ceremony at the local church with wildflowers from the field behind his parents' farm. He was steady, reliable, with hands rough from work but gentle when he held mine. We built this home together, a modest two-story on the outskirts of our small town in upstate New York, where the winters were a bit hard but the summers bloomed with promise. Emily came along 2 years later, a bundle of energy with my dark hair and Jack's mischievous grin. Those early days were a blur of sleepless nights and joyful chaos. Her first steps across the kitchen floor, sticky with spilled apple juice. The way she'd curl into my lap during thunderstorms, her small hand clutching my shirt as rain pelted the roof. I worked part-time at the local library, shelving books and recommending stories to wide-eyed kids, while Jack climbed the ranks at the lumber mill, coming home smelling of sawdust and pine resin. Our evenings were simple: dinner around the scarred oak table, laughter over Jack's bad jokes, Emily's school stories filling the air like music. As she grew, our bond deepened. I'd braid her hair before school, listening to her dreams of becoming an artist or a teacher. "Anything but stuck in this town," she'd say with a laugh. Jack and I saved what we could for her college fund, skipping vacations to ensure she had options. She left at 18 for art school in the city, her room upstairs suddenly too empty, the house echoing with her absence. But she called every Sunday, her voice bright over the line, sharing tales of gallery openings and late-night coffees. Jack and I adjusted, finding comfort in our routines: morning coffee on the porch, watching the sun rise over the fields, evenings with books or the occasional movie, his arm around my shoulders. Holidays were our anchor. Christmas especially. Emily always came home, no matter how busy her life got. We'd bake cookies together, the kitchen warm with the scent of vanilla and nutmeg, flour dusting our aprons like fresh snow. Jack would string lights on the tree, humming off-key carols, while Emily and I wrapped gifts, whispering about surprises. It was in those moments I felt whole, the threads of our family woven tight against the world's pole. But lately, something has shifted. Her last visit, over Thanksgiving, she'd been quieter, her smiles forced, her eyes lingering on the house as if appraising it. I'd chalked it up to stress her job as a graphic designer wasn't paying well, she'd said, and her latest boyfriend had vanished without a word. "I'm fine, Mom," she'd insist, but her hugs felt hurried, her laughter a beat too late. Jack noticed too, though he didn't say much. "She's grown, Clara," he'd murmur, squeezing my hand. "They all fly the nest eventually." But I worried, as mothers do, lying awake at night to the creak of the house settling, wondering if I'd missed some sign. Our finances were tight. Jack's mill had cut hours, and my library shifts barely covered the bills, but we managed. The house was paid off, a nest egg we'd built brick by brick. Emily knew that. She'd joked about inheriting it someday, far in the future, or so I thought. It started small, that first whisper of suspicion, like a draft sneaking under the door. A few weeks before Christmas, Emily called late one evening, her voice hushed over the phone. "Mom, how's Dad's health? He looked tired last time." Jack had been complaining of back pain from the mill, but it was nothing new, age catching up. We'd laughed. I told her as much, but she pressed, asking about his medications, the doctor's visits. It felt odd, probing, but I brushed it off as concern. "He's fine, honey, just need to slow down." Then came the packages. 2 arrived at our door, addressed to Emily but sent here. Strange, since she had her own apartment. "Just some art supplies," she explained when I mentioned it, but the boxes were heavy, unlabeled. I didn't open them. Privacy was important, I'd always taught her. But one night, as I tidied the guest room for her arrival, I bumped one, and it rattled softly, like glass vials. A faint chemical smell lingered, sharp and unfamiliar. I paused, heart quickening, but shook my head. "Paranoia, Clara," I told myself. "She's an artist. Could be paints or solvents." Her arrival on Christmas Eve amplified it. She hugged me tightly at the door, snowflakes melting in her hair, but her eyes scanned the room over my shoulder, lingering on Jack as he carried her bags upstairs. Dinner was tense. She picked at her food, her fork clinking against the plate in the quiet. "You okay?" I asked, passing the mashed potatoes. She nodded, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Later, as we decorated the tree, she dropped an ornament, one from her childhood, a fragile glass angel. It shattered on the floor, and she stared at the pieces, tears welling. "I'm sorry," she whispered, kneeling to sweep them up. Her hands shook. Jack patted her back. "Accidents happen, kiddo." But as I watched her, a knot formed in my stomach. Something was off, hidden beneath her familiar face. That night, I couldn't sleep. The clock ticked steadily in the hall, each second stretching. I heard her footsteps downstairs, soft padding in the kitchen. Creeping to the door, I listened. Cabinets opening, water running, a murmur too low to catch. When I peeked down the stairs, she was at the counter, stirring something in a cup, her back to me. The scent wafted up, herbal but with that same sharp undertone from the packages. She turned suddenly, and I ducked back, heart pounding. "Just making tea," she called up, as if sensing me. I mumbled goodnight and retreated, but sleep evaded me. What was she hiding? And why did it feel like the warmth of our home was slipping away? Christmas morning came too soon. The sun was barely up, pale light filtering through the frost-laced windows, when Emily slipped into our bedroom like she used to when she was little and afraid of storms. She stood at the foot of the bed in her old flannel pajamas, hair tousled, holding 2 cups. "Merry Christmas, Mom," she said, voice sweet as the peppermint bark we'd made the night before. "I made us tea, special blend, just for you, chamomile and something I brought from the city. It'll help you relax." Jack was already gone, called in for an emergency shift at the mill, even though it was a holiday. The house felt hollow without his heavy footsteps and off-key humming. I sat up against the headboard, the quilt my mother had sewn pulled to my chest, and took the cup she offered. Steam curled between us like a question neither of us wanted to ask. The smell was wrong, sweet at first, then a metallic bite underneath, like pennies left in rain. She watched me so carefully, too carefully. Her fingers worried the sleeve of her pajama top, twisting the fabric the way she did when she was 8 and lying about breaking my good vase. I smiled, Lord knows I tried, and lifted the cup to my lips, but didn't drink. "You first, honey," I said softly. "Let me see if I like it." Her eyes flickered. Just a heartbeat, but I saw it. "No, Mom, it's for you," she insisted, pushing the other cup toward me again. I already have mine. That was when I did it. Quick as turning a page, I switched the cups while she reached to set the tray on the nightstand. The porcelain was warm against my palms, the switch so smooth she didn't notice. She took a sip from what had been meant for me, then another, smiling like everything was fine, and then it WASN, single quotes T.10 seconds, maybe 15. Her face drained of color so fast I thought she'd faint. The cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the hardwood floor in a spray of amber liquid and broken china. She pressed both palms to her stomach, eyes wide, breath coming in shallow gasps. Mom, it came out. What did you do? I was already out of bed, bare feet stinging on the cold floor, reaching for her as she doubled over. Emily, talk to me. What was in that tea? She tried to straighten, but her knees buckled. I caught her before she hit the ground, lowering her to sit on the rug among the shards. Her skin was clammy, pupils blown wide. It wasn't supposed to be me, she whispered, tears spilling over. It was just supposed to make you sleepy, so tired you wouldn't fight when they came for the house. The words hit harder than any slap. I knelt there, cradling my grown daughter while the Christmas tree lights blinked mockingly in the hallway, and felt something inside me fracture clean in two. They came for the house. I made her drink water glass after glass until she was sobbing and retching into the toilet. I didn't call 911. Not yet. I needed to hear it from her own mouth while the poison, or whatever it was, still loosened her tongue. She sat on the bathroom floor, back against the clawfoot tub, mascara streaking her cheeks like war paint gone wrong. It's not just me, she cried. It's Derek. You remember Derek? From art school. I did. The charming one with the leather jacket and the smile that never quite reached his eyes. The one who'd borrowed $3,000 from us 2 years ago for a gallery deposit and disappeared. He found out Dad's life insurance doubled last year when the mill changed policies. And the house is paid off, he said. He said if you were gone, I'd inherit everything quick. No probate mess because there's only me. I stared at her, this child I'd carried and sung to and bandaged scraped knees for, and felt the room tilt. You were going to drug me so this boy could kill me for money. No. She shook her head violently. Not kill, just make you sleep, deep sleep, then stage it like you fell down the stairs or something. An accident. He swore no one would ever know. The insurance and the house sale would pay his debts, and I'd get enough to start over somewhere warm. I'm drowning, Mom. The loans, the credit cards, he said this was the only way. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she folded in on herself, arms wrapped around her knees. I should have felt rage. I should have screamed until the windows rattled. Instead, I felt a vast, hollow cold, like someone had opened every door in the house in January. I made her tell me everything. The plan had been in motion for months. Derek had a friend who worked at a veterinary supply place, something called aconite. Extracted from monkshood, fast-acting but hard to trace in small doses. Enough to slow the heart, confuse the mind, make a fall down those steep farmhouse stairs look tragically plausible. The special tea was step 1. Knock me out on Christmas morning while Jack was at work. Derek was waiting in town, ready to drive out once she texted that I was resting. They'd even rehearsed how she'd cry on the 911 call. She wept harder when she described practicing that call in the mirror. I kept thinking about your face when I was little and I had nightmares. You'd sit with me until I fell asleep. I told myself I could still sit with you. After that it wouldn't be so different. I left her on the bathroom floor and walked to the kitchen on legs that didn't feel like mine. The broken cup still lay where it had fallen, tea soaking into the rug like dried blood. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and dialed Jack. He answered on the second ring, sounding tired but happy. Merry Christmas, Clara. Are you girls opening presents yet? Come home, I said. My voice was flat, calm in the way a frozen lake is calm right before it cracks. Come home right now. While we waited, I cleaned. I always clean when the world tilts. I swept up the porcelain, mopped the tea, opened the windows to let the bitter air scour the house. Emily sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. Every so often, she'd whisper, I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry, but the words fell like snowflakes on a fire. Pretty useless. Gone. Jack walked in 20 minutes later, cheeks red from the cold, carrying a poinsettia he'd picked up for me at the gas station. He took one look at my face and stopped dead in the doorway. Clara, I told him, quietly, fact by fact, while Emily sobbed into her sleeve. When I got to the part about the stairs and the insurance, Jack made a sound I'd never heard from him before, half growl, half wounded animal. He took one step toward her, fists clenched, then stopped. His shoulders sagged like a man who'd just aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Our baby girl, he said, voice breaking. How did we miss this? I didn't have an answer. I still don't. We sat there in the kitchen for what felt like hours. Though the clock on the wall said only 30 minutes had passed. The poinsettia wilted slightly on the table, its red leaves curling at the edges as if ashamed to witness this. Emily had stopped crying, her face puffy and raw, staring at her hands folded in her lap like a child caught stealing cookies. Jack paced the linoleum floor, his work boots leaving faint scuffs. Each step a muffled thunder in the silence. I didn't know what to do next. My mind raced like a hamster on a wheel, endless motion, going nowhere. Call the police. Lock her in her room. Pretend it was all a nightmare and open presents like nothing happened. But the shattered cup in the trash bin said otherwise. Finally, I stood, my chair scraping back with a sound that made Emily flinch. Get your phone, I told her, voice level. Show me the messages with Derek. She hesitated, then pulled it from her pocket with trembling fingers. The screen lit up with notifications, texts from him, heart emojis, and promises of our future. I scrolled through them, Jack reading over my shoulder, his breath hot on my neck. There it was. Plans laid out like grocery lists. Get the aconite in her system Christmas morning. I'll handle the rest. Love you, babe. My stomach turned at the casualness of it all. Jack slammed his fist on the table, making the cups jump. That son of a, he cut himself off, glancing at Emily. Even now, he couldn't curse in front of her. We're calling the cops. No, Dad, please, she begged, grabbing his arm. It'll ruin everything. I didn't mean you meant enough to poison your own mother. He roared, pulling away. His face was purple, veins standing out on his forehead like rivers on a map. I put a hand on his chest, feeling his heart hammering. Not yet, I said softly. We need to think. Think that's what I did best. Plan the garden in spring, budget the groceries when money was tight. Soothe Emily's fevers with cool clothes and stories. Now, I need a plan for this. Derek was out there, waiting for her signal. If we called the police too soon, he might bolt. If we waited, he might come anyway, suspicious of the silence. Text him, I told Emily. Tell him it's done. I'm asleep. Tell him to come over in an hour, like you planned. Her eyes widened. Mom. No, he'll know something's wrong. Not if you play it right. I sat beside her, taking the phone. My fingers felt numb as I typed. She's out. Hurry, before Dad gets home. I hit send, then deleted it from the sent folder just in case. Emily watched me, mouth agape, like she'd never seen me before. Jack nodded slowly, understanding dawning. We caught him in the act. Evidence. It wasn't revenge, not really. It was justice, the kind that sticks because it's undeniable. We spent the next 40 minutes preparing. Jack hid his truck behind the barn, out of sight from the road. I moved the presents from under the tree to the closet, clearing the space like we were staging a play. Emily sat on the couch, wrapped in a throw blanket, instructed to act normal when he arrived. If you warn him, I said, meeting her eyes, you'll lose us forever. She nodded, tears fresh again. I won't, I swear. I retreated to the bedroom upstairs. The door cracked just enough to hear. The waiting was agony, the tick of the grandfather clock in the hall, the distant hum of a snowplow on the main road. My mind wandered to Christmases past. Emily at 5, ripping paper with glee. At 12, baking her first pie, flour everywhere. At 20, bringing home her first serious boyfriend, who turned out to be kind but fleeting. How had we gotten here? Was it my fault, too trusting, too soft? Or hers, too desperate, too easily swayed? The crunch of tires on gravel snapped me back. A car door slammed. Footsteps on the porch. The front door creaked open. Babe, Derek's voice, smooth as oil, floated up. In here, she called, voice steady. Good girl. I crept to the top of the stairs, peering down. He was taller than I remembered, hair slicked back, wearing a black coat that looked too expensive for our town. He hugged her, quick and possessive, then glanced around. Where's the old lady? Upstairs, sleeping. Emily's tone was flat, but he didn't notice. He grinned, pulling a small vial from his pocket. More aconite, maybe, or something worse. Let's make this quick. The stairs are over there. I'll bump her a bit, make it look like she tumbled. Natural causes, easy peasy. My blood ran cold. Jack, hidden in the pantry off the kitchen, burst out then. Like hell you will. Derek spun, eyes wide. What the Jack tackled him before he could finish? Years of millwork making him strong despite the gray in his hair. They crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs, ornaments rattling on the tree. Emily screamed, backing away. I flew down the stairs, phone in hand, already dialing 911. Police, we have an intruder trying to harm my family. Derek fought, cursing, but Jack had him pinned. You think you can come into my home? Hurt my wife for money. By the time the sirens wailed in the distance, Derek was zip-tied with Jack's work belts, sitting sullen on the floor. Emily hovered nearby, whispering apologies that no one acknowledged. The police arrived, officers we knew from church, their faces grim as we explained. They took statements, bagged the vial, and listened to Emily's tearful confession. Derek spat denials, but his texts on her phone sealed it as they cuffed him and led him out into the snow. He shot Emily a look of pure venom. You bitch. This was your idea too. She crumpled then, sliding down the wall. The officers took her statement separately, but didn't arrest her, not yet. We'll need to investigate, they said gently, but cooperation helps. Jack and I stood on the porch, watching the cruisers pull away, red and blue lights flashing against the white landscape. The cold bit at my cheeks, but I barely felt it. What now? He asked, voice rough. We wait, I said, and we heal. Somehow, the days that followed blurred into a haze of questions and quiet. The police came back twice, piecing together the plot. Emily stayed with us under house arrest of sorts, though not official. She helped with chores, cooked meals that tasted like ash, and avoided our eyes. I found the packages in her room, more vials, instructions printed from some dark corner of the internet, evidence, all of it. Word spread, as it does in small towns. Neighbors whispered at the grocery store, eyes sliding away when I passed. Poor Clara, they'd say, loud enough to hear, her own daughter. The mill gave Jack time off, pats on the back for handling it like a man. But at home, the silence was deafening. We'd eat dinner without speaking. The clink of forks like accusations. I confronted her one evening, as snow fell outside like a curtain closing. She was washing dishes, sleeves rolled up, suds dripping from her hands. Why, Emily, really why? She turned off the faucet, drying her hands on a towel I'd embroidered years ago. I was scared, Mom. Derek said we'd lose everything, my apartment, my job. He made it sound easy, like a movie. I thought, I don't know, that you'd understand someday, or forgive. Forgive attempted murder. My voice rose, despite my resolve. It wasn't murder. Just an accident? But even she didn't believe it anymore. I left her there, retreating to the living room where Jack sat staring at the fire. We have to decide, he said, press charges or not. The choice weighed like lead. Send our daughter to prison, or let her walk with a slap. Neither felt right. But justice isn't always clean. In the end, we pressed charges, not out of spite, but because letting it slide would have poisoned us worse than any herb in that tea. The decision came one sleepless night, Jack and I lying back to back in bed, the space between us wide as a canyon. If we don't, he whispered into the dark. What does that teach her? That blood excuses everything. I turned to him then, tracing the lines on his face etched deeper by worry, and nodded. The next morning, we called the detective, handling the case. Emily was there when we did it, stirring oatmeal at the stove, her spoon clinking against the pot like a countdown. She didn't fight, just set the bowl down untouched and said, I understand. But her eyes, those eyes I'd soothed through fevers and heartbreaks, held a quiet plea that haunted me. The arrest was mercifully quick. 2 officers came to the house that afternoon, snow crunching under their boots as they read her rights in our living room. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. I could feel their stares like pins. Emily went quietly, head down, wrists cuffed in front. As they led her to the cruiser, she glanced back. I love you, she mouthed. Jack turned away. I managed an odd word, exploded like a brush fire in dry grass. By evening, the phone rang off the hook, friends from church. Jack's coworkers, even the librarian who'd trained me years ago. Clara, is it true? They'd ask, voices laced with pity and a hint of thrill. I kept responses short. Yes, we're managing. But inside, shame coiled tight. How had I raised a child capable of this? Whispers followed me to the grocery store. Her own mother, on Christmas. Cashiers avoided my eyes, bagging bread and milk with hurried hands. The local paper ran a story 2 days later, front page, above the fold. Local woman arrested in holiday poison plot, with a photo of our house looking forlorn in the snow. They got details wrong, said it was arsenic, not aconite, but the core stung true. Derek's mugshot glared beside Emily's high school graduation picture, the one where she beamed in cap and gown. Readers ate it up. Comments online poured in. Anonymous judgments, sharp as knives. What kind of monster drugs her mom? Parents must have failed her. I read them once, late at night on Jack's old laptop, then closed it and wept. The church was the worst. Sunday service, the pews filled with familiar faces, Pastor Reynolds preaching on forgiveness with glances my way. After, the coffee hour buzzed. Mrs. Harlan, who taught Emily in Sunday school, pulled me aside. "We're praying for you, dear." Such a shock. Her hug smelled of lavender and judgment. Others offered casseroles, tuna noodle, lasagna left on our porch, with notes, "Thinking of you in this trial." Jack ate them. I couldn't stomach the charity. Work suffered too. At the library, patrons whispered as I stamped books, their eyes darting to the newspaper rack where our story lingered. My boss, kind-hearted Ellen, suggested time off. "People talk, Clara. It'll pass." But it didn't, not quickly. Jack faced it at the mill. Slaps on the back turned to awkward silences. Jokes about watching your tea that landed like lead. One guy even asked if we needed security. He laughed it off, but came home quieter. His lunches uneaten. Emily's arraignment drew a crowd, townsfolk crammed into the small courtroom. Air thick with murmurs. She stood in orange, hair pulled back, looking smaller than her years. The judge read charges. Attempted assault, conspiracy. Derek, in a separate hearing, pled not guilty, his lawyer spinning tales of coercion. But Emily cooperated, her statement clear. "I did it. I was wrong." Bail was set low. We posted it anonymously through a friend. She came home that night, but the house felt different. Walls echoing with unspoken accusations. The community ripple widened. The family called my sister from Ohio, Jack's brother in Florida, shocked voices over the line. How could she? They'd ask, and I'd explain in fragments, each retelling chipping at my soul. Holidays, invitations dried up. No one wanted our shadow at their table. Even the Christmas lights we'd left up seemed dimmer, mocking. But amid the fallout, slivers of grace appeared. A few true friends stood firm. The Wilsons next door shoveled our drive without asking. Pastor Reynolds visited, sharing stories of redemption without preaching. "Pain reveals character, Clara," he said over tea, plain chamomile, no specials. And slowly, the whispers softened. A month in, the paper ran a follow-up. "Family seeks healing after holiday horror." They quoted me anonymously. "We're broken, but mending." Derek's trial came first, swift and damning. Evidence piled up: texts, vials, his prior arrests for fraud. The jury convicted in hours. Attempted murder, 10 years. He glared at Emily on the stand, where she testified against him, voice steady despite tears. "He manipulated me," she said, "but I chose wrong." The courtroom hushed. Even the judge nodded. Emily's single quote's turn was quieter. Plea deal, probation, community service, therapy, no prison. Thanks to her cooperation and clean record. The judge looked at us, Jack, gripping my hand white-knuckled, and said, "This family's suffered enough." She walked out free, but the weight remained. Public eyes lingered, but shifted. People nodded at me in the street now, a quiet respect. "You're strong, Clara," they'd say. Strength born of necessity, I'd think, but smile anyway. Healing didn't come in a rush, like spring after winter, but in drips, slow and steady as melting ice. Emily moved back in her apartment, lease broken, job lost in the scandal. We set rules. Therapy twice a week. No contact with Derek's crowd. Help around the house. She nodded to it all. Shadows under her eyes, deep as bruises in the mornings. I'd find her at the kitchen table, sketching like she used two flowers, birds, our old barn. "Remember when I drew that for your birthday?" she'd say softly, holding up a page. I'd nod, throat tight, and pour coffee for us both. Jack thawed slower, his words gruff, but he fixed her car when it sputtered, taught her to change the oil. "Can't rely on strangers," he'd mutter. Therapy helped. Family sessions where truth spilled like overdue rain. Her fears of failure, my overprotecting, Jack's quiet distances. I felt invisible, she confessed one day, tissues crumpled in her fist, like I had to grab something big to matter. We listened, really listened. For the first time in years, spring brought change. Emily volunteered at the community center, teaching art to kids' small hands, dipping brushes, laughter filling rooms that echoed our old home. She bloomed there, purpose, replacing desperation. Jack and I gardened together, knees in dirt, planting tomatoes and beans. The physical work mended what words couldn't, his hand on mine as we weeded. Silent understanding. One evening, as fireflies danced in the yard, Emily sat with us on the porch. "I almost destroyed this," she said, voice barely above the cricket's song. "How do you forgive that?" Jack looked at the stars. "Day by day. Kiddo, we choose it." I reached for her hand, feeling the warmth I'd missed. Because love doesn't quit. It bends, but holds. It wasn't perfect. Scars remain trust fragile as new leaves. Nights when doubt whispered. But we rebuilt, brick by careful brick. Emily got a job at a local gallery, her designs selling slow but steady. Jack retired early, the mill payout easing our worries. I returned to the library. Stories in my hands, a reminder that endings can be rewrite. Looking back, that Christmas tea was a wake-up bitter, but necessary. It stripped illusions, forced us to see the cracks we'd ignored, and in mending them, we found strength we didn't know we had. Months turned into a year. The seasons cycling like pages in a book we'd all dog-eared with our mistakes. Emily threw herself into her art with a fervor I'd only glimpsed in her childhood sketches. Canvases filled with swirling colors that spoke of turmoil and tentative hope. She'd set up a small studio in the barn, the air thick with the scent of oil paints and turpentine, her brushes dancing across the fabric as if chasing redemption. One afternoon, I wandered out there, carrying a thermos of hot cocoa, the steam rising in the crisp fall air. She was working on a portrait, our family, stylized but recognizable, Jack with his steady gaze, me with a soft smile, and her in the center, eyes looking forward. "It's for you," she said, wiping her hands on a rag that smelled faintly of linseed oil. "To hang in the living room, maybe." I traced the lines with my finger, feeling the texture of the paint, rough yet alive. "It's beautiful, honey, but are we ready for that?" She set the brush down, her shoulders slumping just a bit. "I don't know, but I want to try." We sat on the hay bales then, sipping the cocoa, the silence companionable for the first time in ages. She talked about her therapy sessions, how she'd unraveled the threads of resentment, the way Derek had preyed on her insecurities like a wolf in sheep's clothing. "I felt like a failure," she admitted, voice low against the rustle of leaves outside. "You and Dad built this life, solid as the house itself. I kept crumbling, job after job, relationship after mess. He made me believe this was a shortcut to stability." I nodded, remembering my own youthful stumbles marrying young, scraping by in those early years when Jack's mill job paid peanuts and I waited tables on weekends. "Life's not a straight path, Em. It's a wonder. We all get lost sometimes." I told her stories I'd kept buried. The time I nearly left Jack in our 5th year, suitcase packed after a fight over money. The miscarriage before her that left me hollow for months. Her eyes widened, as if seeing me anew, not just mom, but a woman with fractures of her own. Jack joined us later, his flannel shirt dusted with sawdust from fixing the fence. He didn't say much at first, just listened as Emily shared more her fears of never measuring up, the pressure she'd put on herself. When she finished, he cleared his throat, the sound rough in the quiet barn. "I wasn't always there like I should have been," he said, staring at his calloused hands. "Worked too much, talked too little. Maybe that's where the cracks started." It was the closest he'd come to admitting fault, and Emily reached out, her hand covering his. A small gesture, but it bridged something. We started traditions anew, careful not to mimic the old ones tainted by that Christmas. Sunday dinners became sacred, no phones, just talk around the table, candles flickering against the darkening windows. Emily cooked sometimes, her lasagna layered with cheese and stories of her week at the gallery. Laughter crept back, tentative at first, like a stray cat testing the porch steps. Jack's jokes landed better. My smiles felt genuine. The community thawed too. At church, Mrs. Harlan invited Emily to help with the youth art programs, small steps, but affirming. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she said over coffee one day, her lavender scent now comforting rather than cloying. The whispers faded, replaced by nods of respect. "You handled it with grace, Clara," folks would say at the library, checking out books on forgiveness or family dynamics. I recommended a few, drawing from my own late-night reads. Finances stabilized. With Derek behind bars, his threats evaporated like morning fog. Emily paid us back slowly the $3,000 from years ago, plus interest from her gallery sales. "It's not much," she'd say, handing over envelopes with a shy smile, but it was everything, a symbol of accountability. Jack invested some in the house. New paint on the walls, a sturdy railing on those fateful stairs. "No more accidents," he quipped, hammer in hand. There were setbacks, of course. Nights when Emily withdrew, staring out the window at the stars, doubt clouding her face. Or when Jack and I argued, old tensions bubbling up like forgotten stew on the stove. But we talked through them now, voices calm, hands held across the table. Therapy taught us that communication as a lifeline, not a luxury. One crisp autumn day, almost 2 years after that Christmas, Emily came home with news. "I got accepted," she said, waving a letter from an art residency in Maine. 3 months, focused work, a fresh start. Her eyes shone, but hesitation lingered. If it's okay with you. Jack and I exchanged glances over our coffee mugs, the kitchen warm with the smell of fresh bread I'd baked that morning. Go, I said, pulling her into a hug that smelled of yeast and possibility. But come back. This is still home. She left in November, the leaves crunching under her tires as she drove away. The house felt empty again, but not hollow echoes of her laughter lingered in the halls. Jack and I adjusted once more. Evening walks in the fields, his arm linked in mine, talking about the future. Retirement loomed for me too, perhaps travel, or volunteering at the community center, like Emily had. Looking back, that poisoned tea was a catalyst, bitter as it was. It forced us to confront the rot we'd let fester, unspoken resentments, assumed understandings. In its wake, we grew roots deeper, branches stronger. Emily writes weekly now, her letters filled with sketches and stories, signed with love that feels earned. We've forgiven, not forgotten. Trust rebuilt on honesty, not blind faith. Life goes on, as it must. The farmhouse stands solid, windows glowing against the winter dusk, and in quiet moments, I sip my tea. No specials and give thanks for the strength to weather the storm. That Christmas morning, I learned that love can survive the unthinkable, but only if it's brave enough to face the truth. No matter how ugly. Emily is thriving now, her art hangs in galleries, and she still calls every Sunday. Jack and I sit on the same porch, holding hands a little tighter, laughing a little louder. Because we know how fragile it all is. Family isn't just blood, it's the choice, every single day, to stay, to forgive, to rebuild. So I'll ask you the question that still keeps me awake sometimes. If the person you loved most tried to take everything from you, could you find your way back to love? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear that healing is possible, even after the darkest day. Thank you for sitting with me tonight. I'll see you in the next one. God bless, and take care of each other.